as leader of the Tar Heel program. Banghart was the 2015 Naismith National Coach of the Year after leading Princeton to a 30-0 regular season record. In 12 years as a head coach there, she amassed a 254 and 100 to 103. That's a 71% winning average, including 137 and 31. That's almost an 82% mark against Ivy League opponents. Under her direction, the Tigers won 7 Ivy League titles and reached the NCAA tournament 8 times, and she accomplished all this while emphasizing academic pursuit, service, and leadership. In her first season in Chapel Hill, Tar Heels started 8-0, the best beginning since the 2014-15 season, and Carolina finished that year 16-14. Born and raised in New Hampshire, Banghart was a three-year starter at Dartmouth College, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in neuroscience in 2000. She was a 2-time first-team All-Ivy selection and owns the Ivy League record with 273 career three-pointers. In 1999, she earned the Ed Seitz Award as the top three-point specialist in the nation after connecting on a program-best 97 three-pointers. After graduating from Dartmouth, she worked at Episcopal High School in Alexandria, Virginia, as the girls' athletic director and head coach at the girls' basketball and tennis teams. An experience, she says, that taught her the transformative power of teaching and coaching. She returned to her alma mater as an assistant coach from 2003 to 2007 and won 2 Ivy League championships during her tenure as Dartmouth's recruiting coordinator. She also used that time to earn a master's degree in writing and leadership development. In 2007, Banghart took over a Princeton program that had never played in the NCAA tournament, transformed her team into a perennial NCAA participant that rewrote both the Ivy League and Princeton record books. And over a dozen seasons, she helped the Tigers to a plethora of team and conference firsts and bests, including the top regular season record and the longest winning streak across Division I, both women and men, at 30-0 in 2015. She achieved the highest NCAA tournament seed. That's a number 8 seed in program history. Ivy League's only at-large bid in the NCAA tournament. Highest AP poll and coaches poll ranking, number 13 in program history. The first ranking in the AP preseason poll in Ivy League women's basketball history. And she also helped develop 2 AP and WBCA honorable mention All-Americans, 2 first-team All-Ivy picks, 9 second-team selections, 2 honorable mention recipients, 3 co-SIDA academic All-Americans, and 10 winter academic All-Ivy selections. And she's coached 3 Princeton players who have advanced to the WNBA, including the program's first WNBA draft pick in 2018. Additionally, 7 of her Tigers have gone on to play professionally overseas. Banghart served as an assistant coach for the 2017 USA Basketball Women's U23 national team, which won the inaugural U24 Four Nations tournament in Tokyo. And Banghart serves on the board of directors for the Women's Basketball Coaches Association and on the NCAA Women's Basketball Oversight Committee. She lives in Chapel Hill with her spouse and 3 young children. And started. Well, you've been well introduced already.
Oh,
we're glad that you're here.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm sorry I missed the introduction. That's sometimes the best part. But anyway, just such gratitude. Thanks for including me and wanting to get to know me a little bit. I have such gratitude for being here at Carolina in general, just as the women's basketball coach and sort of charged with the opportunity to build this, rebuild this legacy in a way to what is the model of in college basketball. So a little bit about me. I'm guessing you got all the good stuff, so I'll keep it really simple. I spent the previous 12 years at Princeton, and I've been really patient to wait for what would be the right one. And for me, it had to be a destination, not a stop, because it takes time and it takes community to build a national championship team. And so it had to have a lot of things that checked off the boxes, right? And there's not a lot of schools that can say they have kind of that really academic footprint, that the academic pedigree and transcript and support and habit builders around you on campus are gonna raise your bar. So that had to be a non-negotiable. Obviously, I'm probably the most expensively educated coach in the country. So clearly education is going to be was going to be a part of my next step, or my final step. Also the fact that it had to be a global brand. You're coming from Princeton, you see the power of that no matter where you go in the world, it's a place that can get you in the door. The rest of it's on me, but to be at a place that can open the door was important. And obviously this is a very global brand. And then the commitment to athletics. I think at Princeton, it was a place that valued women's athletics and men's equally. Not a lot of schools do. All schools say they do. And Carolina, clearly with their track record of success across so many sports, it's a place that really values broad-based excellence. And then I also selfishly wanted to be a part of a community. I wanted to be both in a place I wanted to live, but also a campus community. As I look around my office, I'm right in the middle of campus. And I love that part of Carolina. And then lastly, truly, honestly, a place that could win the national championship. And I mean, every school says they're a good school and every school says they can win the national championship, but you have to be able to recruit to it. You have to have the support for it, and you have to provide the experience that the good players want to stay. And so, when you have all those boxes, clearly you're not going for just about anywhere. And then when Bubba called me, I was like, uh-oh, this is probably it. And so it was a quick decision. They don't give you a lot of time in this business. So it was a quick decision. And to be honest, I haven't even gone back to Princeton for one day since I took the job. So I've hit the ground running, hired a really great staff. I wish they were actually on the call. One led the nation in scoring her senior year in college, graduated magna cum laude. So that's one of them. And Coach Moore, Coach Joanne, played in the Olympics, and then my most recent hire, Coach Adrian, he started his coaching career, 30-year coaching career, at a deaf university, Gallaudet in Washington, D.C. And so think about the level of experience he brings. So I've got a really great coaching staff. And then my recruiting, I think that was probably why Carolina women had fallen off a little bit. The talent that I inherited wasn't the talent that we need here. And so we had to sort of make some massive adjustments quickly. In our 2020 class, I was only here 5 months, and we recruited a top 10 nationally ranked class. One of which is headlined by Deja Kelly, the 5-star player of the year in Texas, 3,000 point scorer, McDonald's, Jordan Brand, All-American. So she's kind of the likes of Cole Anthony on the women's side. And so I think she chose us. She committed to Texas in the 7th grade. So clearly she's been a good player for a long time. But decommitted a couple years ago and kind of chose us it was basically between us, Notre Dame, and Duke. And so a great get for Carolina. And I think you guys will really like seeing what she brings to the community as well. 2 really good players from Carolina also, one 5-star, one 4-star. I kind of liken it to the female Scottie Pippen in Kennedy Todd Williams from Jacksonville, which is over by the coast. She's really Pippen-like, so she's that long, lanky build. And then Anya Poole is a kid from Southeast Raleigh, so kind of right here, 5-star, really physical post. A much more athletic Janelle Bailey, but similar in terms of that, really dominant post inside. And then two more. One more is a kid from Minnesota, 6'2", 3-sport athlete who, us, Northwestern, Stanford. So just a really, she can dunk a volleyball as a guard. She ran a camp last winter. I tell people this story. She ran a camp last winter, and she made all the proceeds she brought to the Ronald McDonald House in her home community. So a really others kind of kid. And then lastly, Ali Zelaya from Phoenix, Arizona, was another 4-star top 100 player who is going to offer a lot of versatility. Got about a 6'5", about a 7-foot wingspan. So you take those 5 players plus 2 grad transfers. One, you guys all remember probably Steph Watts, was a Carolina grad, went to a USC for a year, got injured, and we were able to kind of steal her and bring her back home for her final year. And she's currently healthy. We just wrapped up our first week of workouts, and the length and speed that you guys are used to seeing will be back in Carolina's roster with this new kind of influx of talent. And then lastly, Petra, I can't even say her last name. She's a Czechoslovakian kid, just graduated from Illinois as their leading scorer. Will be joining us as a grad transfer as well. And then the 2021 class, we just finished it. All 4 commits are in the top 50. It very well could be the number 1 recruiting class in the country. It will certainly be a top 5. As not everybody's done yet, but we've got really good talent coming our way, and feel excited about kind of fitting kids to the brand that is Carolina athletic and academic tradition. So our tagline and am I going too fast for folks? Are you guys following me?
Nope. Go.
Doing great.
Okay, great. This is clearly my passion when I talk about recruiting and about and player development and things, so I can get going. But anyway, our programmatic tagline for our program, you'll kind of see it everywhere in our offices and in our team room and our film room, is the concept of strong on own and best together. And I think sometimes when you deal with a team sport like basketball, what you get is you get sometimes the pieces can get lost in the whole, or the whole can get lost in the pieces. And I think part of a main theme of how I coach is I really want us to continue to develop and grow individually in these really strong women, as well as understanding that life's a team sport, and so is hoop. So that we're going to always be our best together. So strong on own, best together is how I'd love for you to think of our program. But yet our social media, for all you savvy ones out there, our social media tagline is in pursuit. And in pursuit is our concept of we're always in pursuit of our best selves, but we're also in pursuit of that national championship. So until we win another one here, I should say, our tagline will be in pursuit. So anyway, I think lastly, or not lastly, but I think another thing that I'd love for y'all to know about our program is that I feel a real responsibility that to change the game at the highest level. And when I say that, if you think about what, especially on the women's side, but really a lot of the sports that Carolina are doing is they're a model in the NCAA, right? Because Carolina is one of the very best schools in the country, being on the highest stage athletically. And so women's basketball, I want to bring it back to where it was in that way, and that we need these high academic schools to be the ones that are standing on the stage at the end of the season to really commit to the model of the student athlete experience that the NCAA really cherishes. So I feel a real sense of responsibility to do that, and working very hard to get it there. And I know the ACC is super competitive. The amount of resources that schools and donors have put into this in the last 5 years is probably a little bit why we fell behind a little bit, is that I think that other schools are choosing basketball as a place to put their resources. And so I'm excited to to be here to reinvigorate in a way. I think of the quote, I don't know how many of you all are homeschooling your children right now. Dear God, I am. And I've got 2 6-year-olds boys, dear God, and a 4-year-old girl. And I read this quote on some social media tag that said, what did it say? It said, it takes a village to raise a child, but a vineyard to educate them. I think in a way, I really believe that, unfortunately, but also I think of it too with building a program. It really takes a community, it takes a village to raise a championship team, and sometimes a vineyard to coach them, right? But I have such gratitude for this community in general and how much they've taken me in. I think about Roy Williams and Mac Brown and Anson Dorrance and Jenny Levy and Karen Shelton. I mean, you guys have just the best coaches that I should definitely not be the one talking to you all, because those 5 are like pulling me along and making sure that I get this program kind of where it belongs. So I can give you 2 stories that I think will help you learn a little bit more about me as your leader. One of which is the time that I didn't meet the president, but I did meet 2 Supreme Court justices. So I think back to 2015, and we were 30-0 coming out of the Ivy League. And as an Ivy League alum myself, I felt a real responsibility. You can't go 30-0 and then not win in the NCAA tournament. I mean, at that point, you're actually setting the league back, right? And so we finished the 13th in the country. So we get hosed on our seed, and we're playing as an 8 seed against a number 9 Green Bay team, and the president's niece is on my team. And so at the time, Barack Obama was the president, and so she was on my team, and so he was coming to the game. He was at Maryland because they were the 1 seed in the region, and the 8-9 team play the one seed in the second round. So anyway, we're at Maryland, and the president's coming to the game, and so about a minute and a half left to go in the warm up, the president is coming in, and he's walking behind the other team's bench, which is about 40 feet from my bench, and I've got now a minute and a half. The clock is rolling, right? So the other coach did what sort of any law-abiding citizen would do, and that would be kind of turn around and shake and welcome shake the president's hand, as one of the main features of coming to the event. And so I saw that happen, and I was laser focused on my team, because I had just left the locker room 30 minutes before and said, there's going to be a lot of fans there, and about 200 of them are going to be rooting for us, right? You always have to dance with the ones that brought you, right? And so, so just stay locked into me. I'm locked into you guys. And so here I am thinking, oh no, he's coming. And if for a second, if I shake his hand and my team looks at me and runs towards me and I'm not looking at them, I kind of already didn't dance with the ones that brought me. So I let him just walk right behind our bench. I never met him. So I'm on Good Morning America the very next day because we had won for the first time, an Ivy League team. And they asked me what it was like to meet the president. And I had to say, I didn't. But we won the game, right? So I stayed locked in. So the next game, we're playing Maryland, and the president did not come to that one, but the two most recent Supreme Court justices are Princeton alums, Kagan and Sotomayor. So they come to the game. And so they're sitting like right behind our bench because they had asked me, they'd emailed me and said, we'd love to come to your game. How can you make that happen? And I was like, you just sort of, I'll leave you on my list and you kind of walk in. And they said, well, where do I sit? And it took me like a few times of editing my email to be like, where do I sit? I mean, you walk in, you find your seat number and you sit, right? That sounded kind of rude. So I found a nice way of basically saying that, like you retrieve your ticket and you find your seat, right? Well, sure enough, they're sitting like directly behind the bench. And so I did say hi to them because they were there like an hour early because they had never been, so I have found out they had never been to an NCAA sporting event. So I shook their hand and we lost that game. So clearly, go with the ones that brought you. And I think obviously shows you that your leader will always put her team first, as if the leader of the free world I didn't get to meet. So that's the first story. And the second one was I had been selected as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders, the Pope and Tim Cook and Elon Musk. And I would hope if any of you got that phone call, you'd also think it was a joke, right? As I did. So I responded on the phone call as if it was a joke. I thought it was one of my college friends kind of playing a joke on me. So I was respectful, but I was sort of, bantering back and forth, if you will. Well, by the end of the phone call, Patty Sellers, who had made the call to me, said, Courtney, I have to say this was the most engaging conversation that I've ever had in terms of telling someone that they had won this or they had been named in this list. And I was like, oh my God, she wasn't kidding. Like, this is for real. So it turns out, she said, you were so engaging, I would like you to be the speaker at the dinner. So as only my life can be, I ended up being the speaker at the dinner. So again, after thinking this was a complete joke, I thought, what would I speak about right now? I mean, LeBron James is on the list, for example. So what do I speak about? And so I asked the nice woman, would you, I followed up a day later, like, wow, this is really, I'm in, but, I'm not even sure I belong on this list. So what exactly would you recommend I talk about? And she had said, how about you give some of the best advice you've ever received? And I thought, oh man. So I asked everybody I know in the world what advice, what they would suggest. And, they'd suggested any number of things, but none really felt like home. And so I thought instead the advice I give my team. And the advice I always give my team is that life is about two things. Life is about who you are, and life is about who you help. I hope that the players that are with me throughout their journey, with me throughout their 4 years, as well as the 2 years I recruit them, and then the 30 years and 40 years they live after that, and 50 years is, I hope in some way I can help them be a better them and help them be more aware of how they can help others. So those kind of, I hope, give you, a better example of who I am versus me just kind of talking about things that don't interest you, which I have learned is often my passion for basketball. I'm in my house anyway. My dad and brother played college ice hockey. My mom played college tennis. So nobody's really interested in basketball in my family. So I hope at least some of you are. Anyway, it was asked to talk a little bit about COVID. This has been a really tricky time. I've been, in this case, I only have, 2 returning players that played for the previous staff. Before that, I have total, I have 4 returning players from last year's team. So a lot of new faces, and here they are, like, excited to be here, and I'm excited to have them. And then COVID hits. And so, we got them here, we tested them. And the way we've sort of decided to do it is we've made wearing a mask cool. We've made being socially distant the norm. And we have sanitizers basically every 10 feet in my office and in the gym and everywhere else. But we coach in masks. We've separated them kind of in pods. So even when they're returning to campus, we had them return kind of in 2-hour segments separately. So they were never really encouraging them to be in a big group, which was hard because I really like welcoming people back. I'm such a hugger and a lover, where I asked our director of ops to email or to reach out to all the parents and find out who was I allowed to hug and who I wasn't, because it's just such a natural thing for me. But anyway, we kind of have them sectioned off. So they're in pods. So they're in like just a group of 5. They train with that 5. They lift with that 5. They're in the weight room. I mean, they're on the court with those 5, and they eat with those 5. So that if one is to maybe get a positive test, the other group doesn't have to be shut down. So we're learning that we're all replaceable. But so far we've had 2 rounds of testing, and I'm knocking on wood here. We're all negative. I think our players are doing a good job, sort of with their responsibility, and we're getting better individually, which is good anyway for a young team. So that's probably the biggest difference, is the coaching of the mask, and that you really are, you're coaching, you're watching film, you're with a separation, which is really not normal for me. But I'd rather have them here than elsewhere. So I hope that gives a little bit of help. Gavin, is that a good start?
That's excellent. That's fantastic. We appreciate. I'm going to just tell you how we can. Your energy is palpable. We're excited to have you here. I want to elaborate a little bit, or have you elaborate a little bit on just the COVID stuff. I can't. As you probably can share, recruiting is everything here, just to getting the talent that you need on campus. And I can't imagine how one is able to recruit in this landscape as effective. I mean, it's hard. You can only do so much virtually. And I know you have people that have folks target recruits you've been watching since before this, but talk to me about how everybody's handling recruiting in these times.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 things. Well, there's a great quote that I got from the one Gino Ariyama, who coaches UConn on the women's side. And he said, there are 2 types of coaches in college basketball, those that can recruit and those that get fired. And he's exactly right. Right. And so recruiting is at least probably 70% of every single one of my days, including Christmas. And so that's partly, we were on a call yesterday, and my new assistant, Adrian, who's been coaching for 30 years, he said to the recruit and the dad on the call, because the dad flat out asked, how has she gotten so many good players in a 2-year period or 1-year period? And he said, I've been coaching for 30 years and I've never seen a head coach so involved in recruiting. And I'm not saying that to toot my horn. I'm saying, I don't know what everybody else is doing. All that matters is who you have on your team, right? But yeah, it was super hard. So I give a lot of credit to our support staff. We were able to make Carolina kind of in a 2-dimensional form as best we could, in like a PowerPoint process. We really talked about the campus and the academic community, as well as kind of the pieces of how to fit into the basketball community. And then they're really cool. Like, my support staff is what you'd call cool, right? And so we had these games. So we would get onto a Zoom much like this, but with just the family maybe in our staff. And we would play everything from categories to Pictionary to Taboo to, like, these words would come up on the screen. You had to have a song that has that word in it, and you go as many as you can in a minute. I mean, we were doing everything we could to show our personalities, and to show Carolina kind of in a 2-dimensional format, but then to really show our personalities as best we could. And then we'd get some other players who would call in at the right time, and they would join my team to help my team win at any of those games as well. So yeah, it was, we had to be super creative. In a way, we're a little bit behind in our facilities on the women's side. So there's 15 schools in the ACC, and there's only 1 that doesn't have a practice court for women. That would be ours. And so we actually people recruit against us negatively all the time for that. And we were able to say, we can't show you campus, unfortunately. We can't show you our facilities, unfortunately. They're really stunning, but we're not allowed in there. So fortunately, we have some people who might be coming here with a surprise. But in some ways it kind of helped, right? We weren't able to show some of the places that we're still trying to upgrade. But yeah, the recruiting space was really unique, because I was completely panicked about it, if I'm being honest, because Mac and Roy and campus and the other students have been so wonderful at kind of sharing the ethos of this place, right? And this campus outperforms many other campuses visually. But we fortunate, and I'm being new, a lot of them hadn't seen Carolina because we were recruiting a little bit different level than what I inherited. And so the fact that we got what could be the #1 recruiting class in the country was a lot of dancing and creativity, but we did it. So yeah, it's been a unique challenge, I think, for everybody. What else has been hard is the evaluation, right? So if you look at the 22s and 23s, which are the current going to be juniors and going to be sophomores, we don't get to be on the out right now recruiting them, meaning seeing them. And so we're utilizing film. And in our sport, where size and speed is so important, it's really hard when you can't get the size and speed off film as much as you can live. So we're going to have to be really creative and continue to find ways over the next year, I think, as we kind of recalibrate based on COVID.
Excellent. Coach, Jim Hevener, one of our members, has virtually raised his hand. Jim, do you have a question? I think you're muted there, Jim.
Unmute. Okay.
There you go.
Courtney, we've just got about 4 or 5 minutes, and you've touched on this a lot. First of all, I haven't met you, but I've heard so much about you, and now it's easy to see why the excitement is so good. Your enthusiasm is contagious. I think your articulation is spectacular. In a nutshell, it's the same question we asked my old friend Mac Brown last month. After we kind of cut through it, most coaches' introductory speeches are all the same. What I've heard you say here is that you work really, really hard at it, and I'm wondering if you could tell us what we might learn from you that you think is your secret sauce that you do that the coaches who are recruiting against you are not doing, and how do you counter it? I mean, it's hard to say that Duke and Notre Dame and Connecticut are not very good schools. So how do you differentiate?
I think well, I appreciate the question. I think what has been told of me, and I've just owned it, because I think, so I'm not taking credit for coining this, but I'm owning it, is that my authenticity is my superpower. And so I think when you're recruiting someone between the ages of 16 to 18 and those type of things, or even dealing daily with 20 to 18, 22-year-olds, I'm just really authentic to who I am, right? And so what you see is what you get. There's a clarity to communication. There's also, so I write letters, I text, I'll send graphics, I'll send gifts, I just am really personable with these recruits, and that's just because that's who I am, and it's authentic to me. So I think
gifts.
People.
Did you say gifts?
Yeah, gifts, like those dancing like emojis or whatever. Yeah. So I think there's an authenticity to me that I think that people can trust, and that's the big thing is you make decisions with your eyes. Or I'm sorry, you see things with your eyes, but you often make decisions with your heart. And how you get in someone's heart is they trust you. And so I've really, I think I'm really lucky, I think, in that I'm just comfortable in my own skin. And so my authenticity is trustworthy, I think.
Kevin?
Excellent. I want to ask one last question here so that we can honor your time and finish on schedule at 2. We have heard other coaches from the university and from other places talk about some of the generational issues or challenges that exist with some of the I'll just say with millennial and younger age players, and maybe how that is different than many than the ethos, than the culture that many of those coaches themselves played in or thrived in when they were their age. Can you speak to that, and how is that an issue for you, and how you try to overcome that? I imagine the authenticity that you just referenced plays a part in that, but love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, what a great question. As a coach, this is the hardest thing I have to do every day, and that is to help someone grow, you have to stretch them, which takes them out of their comfort zone, right? But yet I'm charged with creating a positive student-athlete experience. Those two things are in constant opposition, because it doesn't feel good to be stretched. It doesn't feel good to be pushed, especially if you're soft, right? Or if for you, work is a learned skill. And oftentimes the more talented you are, naturally, right? You haven't had to work as hard as everybody else sometimes, right? And so that dichotomy, every minute I'm aware of, that I'm pushing them, but I got to find a way to make sure that that they go to bed at night thinking that they're my favorite, right? So that's a constant challenge. So that's the first part of the generational challenge. The second part of the generational challenge is that they live in a comparative society. Thank God they didn't have social media when I was in college, or I might not be sitting here in this chair, right? So the mistakes that I made or the decisions that I made were not out there for anybody else. So I can deny them now, right? But they really can't. And so I think when you're looking every day at how great somebody else's life is, and you're swiping and you're swiping and you're swiping, and you have to look a certain way and fit in a certain way all the time, you know, you spend more time comparing yourself than doing something. So you spend more time trying to be something than trying to do something. So when I think about my authenticity, that's exactly what I tell them, is that just worry about doing. The doers always become something, right? And so I don't assume that I told you, I do not assume that I'm their 24-hour day focus. I haven't asked to be. I've simply asked to be, when you're inside the lines, you're with me, right? And I have chosen to, when we're outside the lines, you guys are still mine. You don't have to choose that. I do. I've chosen, I'm paid to do it, right? But so I try to get them to really think about, well, they're with me, while they're in rehab, while they're in strength training, while they're getting nutrition, just do it. If you're in class, just do it. Don't worry about your basketball season when you're in class. Just do it. And then you will ultimately become something. And so I think in this day and age, I think that's probably really important, because the constant social media pressures are constantly making them think about what they're going to be. And that's, for me, that's just 2 steps down the line.
Well, Coach, that's a great answer, and we are grateful for you sharing your time with us. We want to.
Yeah, I mean, if people have other questions, I have a little bit more time. I had one of my players coming through, but I told her I'd be a little bit late. So
okay, well, in that case, what I'm going to say is, feel free, folks, if you have somewhere else to be, members, please, we can elegantly leave a lecture without being rude. But if Coach has a few more minutes for some questions, I know. Coach, you tell us when you're ready. We'll give it, how about another 5 minutes or so, and we can.
Yeah, sounds great.
I know that Brian Keeliff has a question. Brian, are you still on the call?
Yes, I'm still here. So wonderful talk. Thank you. Inspiring. Tell me, you said you recruit at a different level here than you did at Princeton. What does that mean?
No, I meant I was recruiting a different level player than they had been over the last couple of years. So in other words, of the last 3 years, they've signed one top 50 kid. Right now, we've got a lot of them. So I think it was more just, we wanted to get a talent overhaul a little bit on the roster, a current roster. At Princeton, my Princeton team, thank God we didn't play them last year. They would have beaten this team, but we're catching up.
Because we've heard that to recruit against Stanford it's very hard. So how do you or Princeton, where they give full scholarships and have good names?
Yeah. I think Stanford, fortunately, I'm used to it. So for example, if I recruit against Stanford, as I did against Notre Dame, when I was recruiting Deja, this sounds silly, but one of the things I told her is that, how important is your head coach? And she says, very important, blah, blah, blah. And you make her kind of walk her way into that. And then once she has decided and knows how important playing for head coach is, I say, okay, so me, Muffet, and at that time, Coach P at Duke. Who do you want to invite at your wedding? Who do you want dancing on the dance floor at your wedding? Right. And so things like that, right? You sort of try to differentiate yourself. And then I was saying about Notre Dame, they always say, well, Notre Dame's a good school. It's like, are we seriously you're talking to an Ivy League educated kid. Are we seriously splitting hairs over who's a better academic school? And that's when I go into happiness, right? If you can go to the best school in the world, Princeton, and be unhappy, your level of success is going to be plateaued. You can go to a community college in the local hometown and be super happy and love the experience, and you're going to outperform, right? So I kind of throw the happiness factor in too, because I think I bring a little bit more joy than the other two, I hope. And so, I say we're not going to beat them unless you can out-recruit them. And so I make them know that I'm here. I'm not at Duke, and I'm not at Stanford. So if you want to play for me, then you got to come here. That's the only way to do it.
Good. Very cool. I know that Omar Zen has a question.
Hey, Coach, how you doing? Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
I grew up playing a ton of hoops, a lot of sports, and I love hoops. And I know a lot of coaches have a lot of different areas of focus. Some coaches are really defensive oriented, and they defense, stance, move your feet, rebound, right? Some coaches are more fast break. Some coaches are more fundamentals. So if you had to, now I hate for you to ask you to put yourself into a category, a box. I know a lot of people don't want to do that, but two questions. One, if you had to do that, how would you kind of classify, your style of play? And then my second question is, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way.
Yeah.
I know Anson Dorrance, used to bring out a lot of guys, to scrimmage against his team. And I'm wondering if you've ever done anything like that. Probably not in COVID. It's probably not, feasible. But have you ever done anything like that? Girls that grow up with big brothers or, just have a different mentality, right?
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
So
Yeah,
just interested to hear about.
yeah, sorry. Yep. I'll start with the second part first. We use guys. We don't practice without guys. It's just not possible. Right. And so even with COVID, I called Bubba and said, how many can I have? So I usually have 15. Do you want me to have only 10? Do you want me to have 5? How do you want me to work this out? I know it's a risk I take because I can't control what they do off the court. I can. That group I can, right? So there's no bigger fan of canceling the men's JV season this year than me. I hope that happens because then I'll just tell them, come on down. But yeah, we use guys. They're a great group of guys. I've already written 2. One of them is one of the Moorhead scholars, so I've already written 2 letters of recommendation for them. But yeah, we've got a very, very loyal group of guys. And guys, no offense to the men on the call, but here's how you get men to do something for you. You feed them and you give them gear. And so we don't do anything else. We don't pay them. We just give them food. We feed them and we give them gear, and they are back at 6 a.m. for practice if that's when we're practicing. So yeah, we do use guys. All right. And then in terms of my style or what we focus on, I want to be good at the things that happen all the time. Right. And so things like rebounding and defense and et cetera, those things happen a lot. Right. And so I always tell my players, we're going to be good at the things that happen all the time. We don't need to be great at half court shots. We don't need to be great at buzzer beaters. We got to be really, and little do they know, a lot of things happen all the time, right? It's a fluid game. So they're playing a lot of offense and a lot of defense. If you look at the top 10 teams in the country, they're typically the top 10 defensive teams in the country, meaning they're hard to score on. And then offensively, it's much easier to score against when it's not a set defense. So you want to play fast. But you can't play fast if you don't recruit fast players. So we had to sort of play. We were second in the league in offense this year, which is shocking because we couldn't run. We had no foot speed. So ultimately we'll play faster with better athletes, but defensively we have to be tougher than we were. So I would say I spend it's pretty even, I would say 33 on player individual development every day, defensive tactics and strategy, and then offensive flow. It's sort of all 3 of those things are happening at that percentage probably every day.
Awesome. Well, listen, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. I know I'm excited about the future, and we're grateful that you're here in Chapel Hill. And we wish you the best of luck while you strive for your in pursuit of excellence and beyond. And so we're grateful for you joining us today. Folks, thank you for your time. I hope everybody has a great weekend and be safe. Thanks a lot.
Coach.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for all you guys do for the community.
Great job.
Thank you.